letting them in. I don't know where the waiting room is at. Do you see it?
Yeah, we had the participants. So maybe they thought that it wasn't happening.
Huh?
Yeah, like the two people we had in the waiting room left.
Maybe they'll come back. Yes. Welcome.
We're going to give about 5 minutes to let people continue to filter in, and then we'll get started with tonight's presentation. I want to thank you guys all for joining us and being here. I'm really excited for tonight's teaching. Hi, folks. Welcome in.
Welcome, everyone. I'm going to give it a couple minutes. People are piling in.
To unmute. Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Good.
Coming out from a vacation, well-needed one.
Where did you go?
I stayed home, and I went
a staycation, but still good.
I went to the dentist. I went to the doctor.
Important things to get done.
Exactly. Casey, there.
I'm doing a staycation next week, taking the cat, and yep. And actually doing a lot of sewing because MomoCon is Memorial Day weekend.
Wow.
Which is like Dragon Con but tamer.
Oh wow!
So I have 3 costumes to make for MomoCon.
Oh wow! Well, it's going to be just a couple minutes, but I'm really excited about this CGIP because, talking about organizing.
You've done well, for sure.
Done that in a while. There's so much going on. Hey. This music, Leah.
This is my chill study music.
We'll give it one more minute. I see some people coming in. Let me see. Just keep an eye on it. I think what we should do, I don't know how we can change it, but once it hits the clock, just let people listen in.
What'd you say, Adrienne? I'm sorry.
Nothing. Okay. Hey. 603. 602.
You want to take 3 more minutes, or you want to get started, Adrienne?
We got a lot to cover. I'm gonna give it one more minute because I want to respect time.
Yeah. I want to see where
Sorry about that, y'all.
Love this picture of Kwame Ture. Yes. It's a lovely picture. All right, I think we can get it started because it's a little packed, and as we're gonna try to watch and make sure that we're not, because we had a couple of people waiting before, but then they left. Hopefully they'll come back. All
Yeah.
right.
I'm gonna make Camille and Drew co-host, and you can see Adrian when people are in the waiting room, right? As a
Yeah,
co-host.
I can. I was trying to help you and click
Yeah,
on.
I was just gonna say I'm gonna have an ask of all my co-hosts if you see anyone entering the waiting room, just to let them in while we're doing the presentation, just to not take away from our focus as presenters. So I appreciate it in advance. But we're gonna go
Also
ahead
do it.
and
Close the waiting room might be an option. Not to butt in, but I've done a lot of Zoom stuff.
I think we've tried to do that before. Do you know how we would go about closing the waiting room? Or I don't know.
Yeah, we'll just watch it.
Yeah.
You
It was on
can
the names.
figure out how to turn it off.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll just watch it.
Gotcha. But you said do it like outside of the meeting on the
Within Zoom. Yeah.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Next time we're gonna do that. Thank you
Next
so much.
Thank you.
But we're gonna get started with May's CGIM. This month's meeting is about how a movement is made, capacity building 101. So we're really excited to get started with this presentation. Adrian is going to be my co-host for tonight. If you've never joined us for a climate justice education meeting, my name is Leah Rocha. I'm a program coordinator here at Sustainable Georgia Futures, and I lead these meetings monthly. And I'm really excited to be leading this meeting with an expert in organizing. So yeah, and if you're curious about this photo, we've got Stokely Carmichael here. He's canvassing. And this just goes, it's kind of at the heart of this month's meeting, all about capacity building, building relationships, especially within the community. So this is just like an exemplary photo that demonstrates that. And with that said, we're going to get started with the presentation. All right, so here at SGF, if you guys are familiar with us and have been on calls with us, maybe attended our general meeting, you guys would know that we're obsessed with building people power. And capacity building is at the heart of how we build people power, right? So to ground us in tonight's presentation, I'm gonna get us started with a quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Power without love is reckless and abusive, and love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice, and justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands against love. And I think that is a beautiful quote. Just have that in the back of your mind as we kind of go through some of tonight's presentation. So what's on the agenda for tonight? Per usual, we're going to cover who we are, who is Sustainable Georgia Futures, go through extractive versus regenerative economies, the history of the environmental climate justice movement in relation to capacity building, what is capacity building, defining leadership, building your organizing toolkit, house meeting, and next steps. So Sustainable Georgia Futures is a nonpartisan grassroots organization dedicated to creating green economy pathways for Black and Brown people of color. We are a Black woman-led collective of expert organizers and community leaders working to build power in Georgia's marginalized communities to advance an inclusive economy and promote environmental justice. One of the best toolkits, or one of the best tools in your organizing toolkit are community agreements. We start our meetings off with these every time we have a CGIM because we want to create a safe space where people feel comfortable sharing and speaking from their experience where they sit in life. So in order to do that, we are going to ask all of you lovely people on the call tonight to drop in the chat or come off mute and just share what you need to feel safe and heard in this space. So we'll take a few moments to do that. And I'll kick us off. I think something that's really important for people to feel safe and heard in a space is that we all feel respected. So just having mutual respect. No toxic positivity, totally agree. And just as those come to your mind, just drop them in the chat. I think we usually say like, don't yuck my yum, don't yuck other people's experiences. Enough respect not to interrupt and not to talk too long, of course. Give space for everyone to share. Love that. Adrian, what's your favorite community agreement?
I put no toxic positivity, and the reason why I put that is because sometimes you can feel bad about something, and then someone will just want to come in and fix it, and that's not your job to do all the time.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Don't be over positive when I'm trying to process something and go through something.
For sure. Well, I think those are some great starts to our community agreements for the night. If any other ones come to your mind throughout the meeting or you have a question, feel free to drop it in the chat or private message, and we can add to our community agreements at any point. So up next, we have extraction versus regeneration. Our mission and vision are grounded in a distinct understanding of how economic systems either contribute to or detract from societal well-being. The Climate Justice Alliance offers a valuable tool for examining these dynamics. Extractive economies mostly deplete resources, whether environmental, animal, or human, and exploit them for financial gain. The influence of extractive economic models is evident in larger oppressive systems, such as the prison industrial complex, corporate exploitation of mineral resources, rampant deforestation, and offshore oil drilling. Conversely, regenerative or living economies prioritize resource reuse and regeneration. They foster respect for both human and non-human life while safeguarding and nurturing the environment as it sustains us. Living economies prioritize reciprocity with the life and with the land and among community members. So we firmly believe in the feasibility and ongoing emergence of these living economies. So when we talk about capacity building and working with the community, we want to have respect and we want to be giving to the community. We don't want to be extracting and taking. And I know I talked a lot about like resources, but resources also includes communications, stories. So we don't want to steal or take from anyone. We want to add. And that's really important going into tonight's conversation.
Well said, Leah.
All right, so we're going to hand it over to Adrian, my co-host for the evening, and she's going to get us grounded in some of this history of environmental climate justice.
So we haven't done this in a while, talked about the history of environmental climate justice. And as an organizer, because I first see myself as an organizer, I think it's important, and our logo is the Sankofa bird. So the Sankofa bird represents, it's West African. It's basically go back and get, so that we won't repeat what we've done or learn from what people have done in the past. And with the people sometimes get climate justice movement, the conservation movement, mixed up with the environmental climate justice movement, but they are different things, okay? The environmental climate justice movement really got its start with the 1968 I Am a Man walk. How many people, just by show of hands, if you're on the screen, know about this middle I Am a Man poster here? I mean, it's the Memphis sanitation strike. This is the march that Martin Luther King came back to and was assassinated, right? So he was there and he was representing these folks that was there during this time. And I'll just give you the backstory, because a lot of people know about Martin Luther King coming back and being assassinated through this time. They remember the strike, but they don't remember why the strike was happening, right? And basically, it was the conditions, the environmental conditions in which these men that you see right here, these sanitation workers, were working in. And specifically 2 men who were killed, doing their job because of faulty equipment. So how many people in the room know the name Echo Cole or Robert Walker? Not many, right? Well, these were the 2 men that were out. Echo Cole and Robert Walker were sanitation workers who died accidentally in Memphis, Tennessee, at the corner of Colonial Road and Vern. And that is so important because it happened on February 1st of 1968 while they were working. The pair was putting in the garbage in the truck and they got caught in the tractor and they were grinded up. It was a heinous and a crazy situation, but there had been talks about the conditions in which these men, these sanitation workers, were working, the equipment. And during this time, this right here, this was the straw that broke the camel back for the people within this community, and they began to strike. And this is what brought Martin Luther King back to Memphis, Tennessee. And it's also the precursor, a lot of people don't understand, to the environmental climate justice movement. All right. So these other pictures that you see right here is Warren, North Carolina. How many people here have heard of the 1982 Warren County, North Carolina protests? Well, what happened, you have Robert Bullard, who is the father of the environmental climate justice movement. He had already started organizing around toxic waste that had been put into Black communities in Houston. But in Warren County, North Carolina, and this was state sanctioned. So this is what people don't seem to understand, that a lot of this stuff was state sanctioned, or cities or counties and municipalities were a part of this. There was toxic waste on the side of the road, and they decided that they were going to remove that toxic waste from the side of the road, and they were going to move it into a highly populated Black community. Now, we know by the numbers that when we think about pollutants and brownfields and things of that nature, that over 70% of these are in Black communities, regardless of what your social economic background is. They are dumped in those areas. So we've been fighting this fight for a very long time. So environmental climate justice is not a new thing for us. And I would go as far to say, so this protest was in 1982, right? In 1983, the Government Accountability Office began to provide empirical evidence that toxic sites were primarily being put in communities of color, right? And it really began the movement within the federal government to start monitoring these sites. So our fights were one of the first ones that brought upon accountability through the government. All right, next slide, please. So in this next slide, Leah's gonna talk, she's gonna give you a little bit about what capacity building is and why it's so important. But from back then, in order to do those fights, we saw the people that were out there with the signs that I am a man. We saw, the children and the families out there fighting to get that toxic waste removed, and change was made with that. But we can't do this stuff by ourselves. We have to have a movement to help us to impact any type of change. And that's why we wanted to talk about capacity building today. So with that said, I'm gonna pass it to Leah.
Yes, thank you so much, Adrienne. So what is capacity building? Well, if you look at this photo right here, this is actually from our strategic planning session around organizing for Weatherize ATL and our canvassing efforts with the city of Atlanta. And so this is kind of, I feel like, what capacity building is about. Maybe not in terms of building like a movement to, kind of similar to what Adrienne was talking about, but we're building a movement in our own right. And many nonprofits and
progressive organizations use the term capacity building as a catch-all phrase to encompass all the ways an organization might increase its impact or political power over time. And often capacity building is confused with organizing. As a matter of fact, so has mobilization and advocacy, which we will discuss later on in the presentation, the difference between all three of them. However, capacity building is the process of developing and strengthening the skills, instincts, abilities, processes, and resources that organizations and communities need to survive, adapt, and thrive with fast changes. So, for example, community organizations may increase their capacity by adding new members, leaders, and activists, increasing members' skills and knowledge, forming new strategic partnerships, implementing clear pathways to leadership succession. So, when you kind of consider some of the ways that we can build capacity, you can kind of see how advocacy and organizing make up capacity building because they're tools that are used to do capacity building. But with that said, let's actually drill into that. And I'm going to pass it over to Adrian, who's going to kind of go into those components and explain a little bit further.
So building blocks of capacity building. There may be some organizers on here that are just like, okay, there are other ways in which organizations and community organizations and nonprofits engage, but these are primarily the three ones that folks use, okay? So advocacy, mobilization, and organizing can all fuel social movements and collective change, but they are three distinct models of engagement and with unique and separate end goals. And that's important to know, but all of which can assist with capacity building. So I have to say, coming out of labor and coming out of the environmental climate justice movement with organizing, advocacy, we didn't really look really good on advocacy. We felt as though that organizing was really where it was at and mobilization. But working with Sustainable Georgia Futures and us focusing not only on climate change, but also focus on systemic racism, we have to do advocacy, right? And the reason why we have to do advocacy, and for example, we do it in the Weatherize ATL campaign. We have Canvas ambassadors, but we provide for them transportation, food, childcare if they need it, right? It's not because we are trying to put them in a space whereas they can advocate for themselves, right? That they can be on an equity, equal playing field. And so when you know that you're dealing with people who are starting from behind, as Leah said in the beginning, we don't want to be extractive. We want to be regenerative. We want people to be able to come and thrive in these spaces. So with that said, advocacy is a distinct principle of organizing and engagement and equity work because advocates typically use power to help those with less power. So that was the problem in organizing that we had. We saw people, we didn't see, to me, saying somebody with less power. Everybody has power. It's just using your power, right? How you use your power. And so we tried to stay away from that so that we could always see the power in each individual, in each community. But in certain situations, people are less powerful. So we want to bring them up. If those who have influence and expertise and funding, decision-making authority, let's say a school system or a community, don't use their power on behalf of those who are less powerful, it can make the process of building power, which is organizing, and sharing power, which is engagement, and equalizing power, equity, more difficult. So, I talked about Weatherize ATL. So advocacy may take a wide variety of forms in organizing. And so we want to see that, but what for our purposes, we want to focus in when we're thinking about advocacy. That's why we have it small and at the top as a measure of providing equity. All right, so mobilization. Now, this is what I really find that community organizations and nonprofits and everybody, they really confuse mobilizing and organizing, okay? So we're gonna really talk about what is the difference between mobilizing, because it's so difficult. You know, if I'm going in, when I was a union organizer and I would go into an organization to help them start a campaign, they would often confuse mobilization, getting people out there, massive crowds of people, with organizing. And they're both important, but they're two different things. So let's talk about what mobilization is. So mobilizing is the process of activating and engaging a large number of people, well, mainly a large number of people, to take a specific action or support a specific cause. Mobilizing involves communicating a clear and compelling message, creating a sense of urgency and solidarity, and providing opportunity and resources for people to get involved. So mobilizing aims to generate public awareness and pressure and influence decision makers and demonstrate the strength and legitimacy of a movement. Okay, we got that, right? So we're gonna hold off. I see that there's maybe a question in the chat. And so what we want to do, so talk about the difference. You see, we have organizing at the bottom. So it is like the foundation of everything, which I strongly believe that it is. Sometimes people sleep on organizing, and that's why they can't get no movement. That's why they can't get no impact. That's why they can't get none done. I know that sounds harsh, but it's the truth. You have not done the work, okay? And that's why you can't have any movement, okay? So you're just expecting people to show up, and you could get a lot of people to show up, because if they're angry enough or they're upset enough about something, they can show up. But then they've yelled, they've screamed, they beat down the Baron's door and nothing has happened. And then they feel like, well, why am I still in the same situation and rut? And we all got together. You saw you, I saw you, Jeff, you was there with me. And we were yelling and we were screaming and we were mobilizing and we didn't get nothing done. And the reason why is because we confuse mobilizing and organizing. And do you see how deflating that could be to people who are already struggling? And they had the courage to go out there and scream and yell and stand up for themselves, and nothing happened. And they just didn't realize that what they were doing, it was a piece of the process, but it wasn't the process, right? So let's get into what organizing is, all right? So like I said, people often confuse mobilization and advocacy for organizing, but this is not the case. I'm just going to tell you, organizing is the process of building collective power and leadership. We're going to talk about leadership among a group of people who share common interests, values, or goals. Organizing involves identifying the root cause of the problems that affect the group, developing a shared vision and strategy for change, and creating structures and relationships, that's going to come up again too, that support ongoing participation and action. Organizing aims to transform the social, economic, and political conditions that create and maintain injustice and oppression, okay? So, why is it important to know the difference in the purpose of each of these blocks of work? I'm asking y'all, why do y'all think it is? You can put it in the chat or you can come off the mic. Why do you think it's important? Before I go into why I think it's important.
I think it's important because when you have a cause, you don't want to have a cycle of it not being resolved or no solutions. That's why I think all of them are important. So like organizing is like your purpose, like why am I here? What am I gonna do? Like that.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. And it's so frustrating. I've organized in over 40 states, okay? And I've gone to places they would say, well, and revitalized places where in organizing speak, they call it burnt turf. So it's burnt turf because there's no movement. Every time we go there, people don't want to do it. They don't want to do anything because they haven't nothing was accomplished from what they had did in the past. And actually, because of where they was at, if it was at a job or in a community, there was repercussions. There was repercussions from management. There was repercussions from people in the community that didn't like what they were doing, that made them feel uncomfortable. So it was difficult to get them to go in and do it, right? And what really had happened in those situations was advocacy and mobilization, but not really the organizing aspect of it. So you're absolutely right, right? So when you go back in and you start building those relationships, right? And you start identifying that leader, the hard work, right? Well, we saw Stokely Carmichael sitting on the porch and smiling. That was work, right? Getting out there and building relational trust. When you begin to do that, then you make those changes, right? Moving from talking to action. That's right, Ami. Indeed, indeed. Loved it. Okay, so let me tell you that, thank you for sharing that. And I'm gonna get into organizing and mobilizing and the difference, okay? So organizing, it focuses on building long-term capacity and sustainability, while mobilizing focuses on achieving short-term results. Okay, so when you think of organizing, think of long-term. When you think of mobilizing, think of short-term. All right. Organizing requires more time and resources and commitment, while mobilizing can be more flexible. It could be spontaneous. It could be responsive. But I'm telling you, you get the most out of the mobilizing if you've done the what? The organizing, right? Okay. The organizing empowers people to become leaders and agents of change, while mobilizing relies on existing leaders and allies to mobilize others. Okay? All right. Organizing, last one, because I could do this all day. Organizing creates deeper and more lasting bonds and trust among the group, while mobilizing can create more superficial and temporary connections, right? But that doesn't matter if you already have built the real relational trust. With that said, I'm about to take this, because we talked about leadership, right? I'm gonna switch it over to Leah, and we're gonna take you into something else. All right, Leah.
Yeah, thanks, Adrian. That was really awesome. And I also wanted to add, and I don't know if this is correct, and just kind of go back and forth with you, but my dad figure always says that when you have goals, you need to have a plan and work that plan in order to reach your goals, or else you're just kind of doing a whole bunch of nothing. And if you aim at nothing, you'll hit it every single time. And I
Yeah.
kind of see organizing, from what you were saying, as organizing is the plan, while mobilizing and advocacy are two actions that you can take. They're a part of the bigger plan. And so
Exactly.
if you're just doing the two, it doesn't help you reach your ultimate goal. So I think that was just, you broke that down beautifully. And thank you everybody in the chat for contributing. And like Adrian said, we're going to get into leadership a little bit. So we're going to have some more time for some dialogue. So I want to ask everybody, what does leadership mean to you? And you can come off of mute, like raise your hand and you'll have the floor, or just drop it in the chat and we can read it out loud. And we'll take a few moments to do this.
And I'll be right back. I have something that somebody's at my door.
Anyone feel inclined to share what leadership means to them?
I'll share.
Go for it.
Leadership to me is adaptability. I think a lot of people can thrive in their element, and in certain elements are in certain places that they're, comfortable in, and that we can sometimes see them as leaders. But a true leader is able to take the situation that he has at hand or they have at hand, and adapt to it and find the best plan of action. So I'd say that, through all of what's happened over, the Weatherize program, I will say the most important quality would definitely be adaptability, because everyone knows, even though you have a plan, something will go wrong. You have to be prepared for that. And if you're not, you aren't prepared. So that's
Yeah.
part of being prepared, and that's part of being a leader to me.
I love it.
Thank you, Drew, for sharing. We've also got Danielle in the chat saying leadership is providing a guiding light that sets the tone and cadence for a group or a team. So we've got guidance, we've got adaptability. Some other things that might come to mind are authority, management. And we're gonna get a little kind of basic with what leadership means.
It could be some forms of dictatorship.
Yeah.
Do you think a dictator could be a leader?
Not
I
a
see
great
some
leader,
smiles.
but
I see some smiles. Like, come on.
so our definition of leadership is the ability of an individual or a group of people to influence and guide followers or members of an organization, society, or team. And so when we think about what it takes to be a leader,
Oh, I
adaptability,
love that.
guiding,
The
guidance,
crazy one. I'm sorry.
courage to be the crazy one. Yes, to be to maybe be the lone nut, if you
Yes.
will. Okay. So we're going to sit with that for a little bit, but now we're going to take a little bit of a video break, and I'm going to show you guys a video, and then we're going to talk, but let's take a look at this video and listen to the narrator's commentary on leadership, and we'll talk on the other side.
If you've learned a lot about leadership and making a movement, then let's watch a movement happen start to finish in under 3 minutes and dissect some lessons. First, of course, a leader needs the guts to stand alone and look ridiculous. But what he's doing is so simple, it's almost instructional. This is key. You must be easy to follow. Now here comes the first follower with a crucial role. He publicly shows everyone else how to follow. Notice how the leader embraces him as an equal. So it's not about the leader anymore, it's about them, plural. Notice how he's calling to his friends to join in. So it takes guts to be a first follower. You stand out and you brave ridicule yourself. Being a first follower is an underappreciated form of leadership. The first follower transforms a lone nut into a leader. If the leader is the flint, the first follower is the spark that really makes the fire. Now here's the second follower. This is a turning point. It's proof the first has done well. Now it's not a lone nut, and it's not two nuts. 3 is a crowd, and a crowd is news. A movement must be public. Make sure outsiders see more than just the leader. Everyone needs to see the followers, because new followers emulate followers, not the leader. Now here come 2 more people, then 3 more immediately. Now we've got momentum. This is the tipping point, and now we have a movement. As more people jump in, it's no longer risky. If they were on the fence before, there's no reason not to join in now. They won't stand out, they won't be ridiculed, and they will be part of the in crowd if they hurry. And over the next minute you'll see the rest who prefer to stay part of the crowd, because eventually they'd be ridiculed for not joining. And ladies and gentlemen, that is how a movement is made. So let's recap what we've learned. If you are a version of the shirtless dancing guy, all alone, remember the importance of nurturing your first few followers as equals, making everything clearly about the movement, not you. Be public, be easy to follow. But the biggest lesson here, did you catch it? Leadership is overglorified. Yes, it started with the shirtless guy, and he'll get all the credit, but you saw what really happened. It was the first follower that transformed a lone nut into a leader. There's no movement without the first follower. See, we're told that we all need to be leaders, but that would be really ineffective. The best way to make a movement, if you really care, is to courageously follow and show others how to follow. When you find a lone nut doing something great, have the guts to be the first person to stand up and join in.
Yeah. So it's kind of a silly video, but now we're gonna take some time and I'm gonna ask you guys what are your key takeaways from that? The screaming.
I know.
It's a really silly video.
Any takeaways, y'all?
Oh yeah, I'll start it off if okay, yeah, I'll start it off. I, to me, at first, you see the guy dancing by himself, and you do think he's kind of crazy, but I really like how he said at the end that, that part is really over glorified, and how, we're all told that we need to be a leader, but it really also takes, just as much courage and, intuition or, to integrity to be a follower of someone that is doing the right thing. And I think that often is the most important part of a movement. Martin Luther King could have marched down Washington by himself, but it wouldn't really have done anything. We wouldn't talk about him that much. So he's a great guy, but everybody else that we don't talk about, it was their efforts that really got things moving. And so I'm glad that he highlighted that point. That was what I took away.
I loved it. I loved it. And then James put in here, the first follower is a form of leadership. It transformed a single nut into a movement. That's right.
Well, I want to say too that I feel like this video really enforces kind of just regenerative ways of thinking as well, because when you go in and you're like, I'm the leader, follow the leader, it kind of does border on like a little bit of cultish behavior and cultish tendencies. But I think that when you're respecting other people, that also means you're probably respecting other perspectives and other things to aid in the movement and help your movement. Like the guy who was dancing didn't ridicule the other person who was dancing because of how they were dancing, just appreciated that that person was dancing with them. So then more people felt comfortable to dance how they dance and be free. So that's something that I noticed. We've got Ren in the chat saying leadership takes confidence. Sometimes we lose that as we get older living through society. Totally agree. And Raquel said, it reminds me of the saying, it only takes one to lead or follow and start a movement.
That's right.
Exactly.
All right. Well,
I'm
let's. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're good. I was going to pass it right back to you. So,
Okay, let's go to the next slide. So I think I don't have to say this, but the lesson from the dancing guy is leaders need followers, right? And honestly, at SGF, we're gonna talk about this a little bit at the end, but we're gonna have a Juneteenth 3-day organizing workshop where, I do not like, one of the things I hate is when someone says, well, you're not a leader because you don't have followers. Sometimes you just need to know how to cultivate your followers, okay? And so we have trainings regarding that. And with the 3-day organizing workshop, we're going to get into that because I believe that you have a whole bunch of followers or people who care about you and care about the things that you care about. So, so that's something that we're going to get into. But so I would say that that's the key thing. So let's reference back to that video, okay? So I loved it from the very beginning. I was like, okay, who was that who had said the leader needs to be crazy up front?
Raquel, courageous and crazy.
Yeah, courageous and that was amazing because that's what we're talking about. You need, as we saw in the beginning, whatever you're doing, whatever that we do, like with our house meetings and our one-on-ones, we make it simple. We make it instructional and we make it simple. And that leader, what he was doing that dance, he was dancing crazy, but he made it simple for someone to come in and join and be a part of it. And then the other thing that he did that was super cool, and then what the other guy did, and is especially what Leah said, was that he embraced the next person that came in as an equal. And then that person embraced the next person. And that first person that went had to have guts. So you guys were all right about that. I love the way that he says that that first follower was the spark, was the spark. And so, and that's what it takes to make a movement. Other things that when we do our organizing training, when you do things, if you're gonna follow someone, be public about it. I love when he said you have to be public because you want to make outsiders see what you're doing is not so out there and people who may be on the fence. And the last thing that I wanted to say that he said that leadership is over glorified. I agree with you, Drew, when you're talking about that. You're absolutely right. It's over glorified. There is no movement without followers, and as Raquel said, there's no movement without people who are courageous enough to take that first step. So that is amazing. So now that we have discussed what leadership is, because that is just like so important to capacity building, because we have to have leaders to help us build, right? So we want to talk about a little bit about how we attain leadership, cultivate leadership, just like the dancing guy, but in a more figurative way. All right, next slide. Now, this organizing cycle, if you all have been to our stuff before, we usually will have this toward the beginning of the presentation next to extractive and regenerative, because it grounds us. And we didn't come up with this model. The Industrious Allied Foundation, it's an old school union, came up with this process. We did change it around a little bit, what's in the little circles in the pieces. But the way that SGF does its work, even with its strategic plan, any campaign that it does, this is what we do. We do this organizing cycle. So you see the very first thing that we do is, what do? We identify leaders. And we have a process by which to do that, right? Yes, leaders have followers. Yes, leaders are already doing stuff out in the community. Every Canvas ambassador that is on our team is a leader in their community, right? And so when we talked to them, we were like, what are you doing in your community already? You know, because we wanted people who were already doing the work. Those are, if you want to find a leader, that's one of your first clues, people who are already doing the work. Then we know that they have this leadership and they probably never looked at themselves as a leader, right? So we want to help train and develop that. And then with SGF, we have a bigger plan of creating neighborhood teams, building community, you know, all of the things that we talked about in organizing, identifying the shared issues, researching them, doing public action, all of the things that, but it's a cycle that we do it and it's fluid, right? And so, and we use some tools here, house meetings, one-on-ones, issue assemblies, and we're going to talk more about that. Next slide. So another piece of key part of organizing, because in building a movement and capacity, is that, and we just want to, you know, graze over these. We're not going to get into it, but we are going to talk about building relationships and building relational trust. But telling your story, not someone else's story. Leah talked about it in the very beginning. We don't want to be extractive. We want to be regenerative. And a part of that is not extracting from others' communities their stories. We want to create a leadership team. We want to have structure, you know? We want to do strategizing. And then after we've done all that, take action. But let's talk a little bit more about building relational trust with two key tools of the building block. And I just want to make sure I'm capturing everything in the chat. I think Denise also mentioned the crazy one, by the way. Yes. All right. Okay. So these two tools, and we're going to go through this today. And, you know, Leah is going to take us through the house meeting. And by the way, Leah, we're getting through this doggone training like real and quickly. I'm so happy. Anyway, so our toolkit, what you need in order to build capacity and to build leadership is, no, you cannot go out into a party, into a park and start dancing. You could, and other people can start joining you and coming in. And no, that's not going to help you build up capacity.
On a random day in Atlanta, that
A
might be
random
difficult.
day in Piedmont Park, you
People
can't
might
do it.
think you
It's
got
not gonna.
something going on.
So if you want to start organizing, and we're talking about that base, the base of that building block, we feel like these are the two most important tools that you can use: the one-on-one conversation and the house meeting. So at the very beginning of the presentation, we saw Stokely Carmichael or Kwame Ture talking to someone on a one-on-one. One-on-ones, people sleep on one-on-ones. Okay, first of all, let me just say this. And they don't understand why they can't have movement. And the reason why they can't have movement is because they have not built up that relational trust. Immediately, if I'm working with a group of people and I see that things are not moving, you know what I do? I take a pause. I take a quick pause, and then I think about, have I met with this person, really know who these individuals are, what they're trying to do, what are their hopes and their dreams? Maybe it might not be this, okay? Let's take a pause and let's have some one-on-ones and let's figure out what we want. Let's start building that relational trust, because maybe you don't know me enough and I don't know you enough for us to go and build this together, right? So that's one, everybody used to be like freaking out because I would win all my campaigns and what are you doing? I'm doing this. I'm using these tools. I'm stopping everything and I'm like, wait a minute, let's take a pause. While everybody's rushing around, I'm like, wait a minute, something's not quite, it's a tool that's not quite screwed in and this is not working right. So maybe something is off and let's get it back, or let's figure out where we need to go from here. So don't sleep on the one-on-ones. I would say that's even more important than the house meetings, because the one-on-ones it's a relationship building tool. But the thing about it is what you would hope to do with the one-on-ones is you want to find 10 to 12 people that you can bring together to a house meeting. And it doesn't have to be 10 to 12 people, right? It could be 3 to 4 people in a house meeting or a coffee shop, or we were at Wawa, West Atlanta Watershed. That's where Leah was leading that house meeting at, right? Having a conversation, right? But these house meetings are even more better after we've had one-on-ones. So some of you, I don't know on here, right? But I know James, we had a one-on-one. I know Susan, we had a one-on-one, right? So we've had I had one-on-ones with Ruth, so there's people on here that I had one-on-one conversations with. We're even hiring people to be on this team. I had one-on-one conversations with everyone to figure out, would they be good to be a part of this team, right? And then we came together in the house meeting and began to talk about our issues and talking it out then. Does it always happen that way? Sometimes you invite people to the house meeting and they don't know anybody. But then that's the opportunity for, if they're in a house meeting and you don't know them, to do what? Pull them to the side and say, hey, Ryan, Arain, can I have a one-on-one with you? Do you have time? Would you like to grab Raquel a cup of coffee with me and talk to me? I'm not gonna take up all your time, and I'll take you to the good coffee, Dancing Goats, not Starbucks, okay? I'm gonna treat you right, not that Dunkin' Donut stuff. I'm gonna treat you right, and let's talk, right? If in the house meeting. So these are the two most important tools, and this is the reason why we always do them at the end of almost every CGM, because we're trying to show you all how to do this, how to build capacity, how to build power, because we're obsessed with it. All right. I saw a hand raise. I'm gonna stop before I pass it back to Leah.
It was me. I just wanted to say too that I feel like with one-on-ones and having been with SGF, I don't even know how long it's been, a year or two,
Oh, it's been more than that.
Yeah, it's been a minute with me being in SGF's atmosphere and working with SGF, but learning one-on-ones and also learning how to can be very informal, talking to someone and treating it with respect outside of like a normal conversation, but at the heart of it, it is just a conversation. And I feel like it really humanizes you to other people, just getting that moment to kind of talk. And maybe you talk about the task at hand, but also you get to know that person a little bit better as well. And I feel like with Adrian and I too, she's had one-on-ones, and then we've had a lot of informal conversations where I'm like, I know Adrian, and I'm not scared of her, but you shouldn't be scared of Adrian at all. But like, it's again that the power dynamic and leadership. She's my leader, right? She's my executive director. She's my boss. But humanizing your leaders, having that respect for people, one-on-ones helps you foster that. So I just wanted to add that.
Oh, that was perfect. And Drew had his hand raised.
Oh, I was actually really just gonna piggyback on that. When I initially wanted to raise my hand, I wanted to say just that about the opportunity that one-on-ones allow you to be informal and have that, honest transparency that comes, or that sometimes can be kind of overshadowed by the formality of, speaking professional and things of that nature. So having that opportunity to really just, break it down and rap with each other is invaluable.
Indeed. Any questions about that before we get into the house meetings?
Sorry, y'all.
Oh, no, no problem. Any questions? All right, as we say down here, we cooking with grease. Let's go to the next one. All right, Leah.
So we do these like Adrian said, almost every climate justice education meeting we have. House meetings are where we build relationships and plan strategies for action. House meetings are key in building relational power to make sustainable systemic change. How do we do a house meeting? A house meeting does not have to be in someone's house. It can be anywhere a group of 8 to 12 people can meet to have a conversation that's framed and facilitated. House meetings typically last 60 to 90 minutes and can happen virtually or in person. We do a condensed version of a house meeting, but like Adrian was saying, house meetings are a great opportunity to invite a neighbor, invite a friend, and get some collective conversations around a topic, hear other people's perspectives, get to, have a glimpse into where other people sit in life. And then from there, you can, oh, I didn't know that you experienced this, or I didn't know that about you. Would you like to have a one-on-one and talk about this further? Or I have a similar experience. Can I ask you more questions? Like, it's just a great jumping point for getting to know people, organizing, and whole point of this presentation, building capacity, right? History of house meetings. So house meetings began with the United Farm Workers Campaign and the Civil Rights Movement of the 1960s. House meetings happened anywhere that could be a private meeting, anywhere there could be a private meeting to discuss the issues most deeply and widely felt in communities. We call them house meetings, but think of SNCC, think of all the movements that came before. I mean, we could even look
United
into
Farm Workers, yeah.
Yeah, think about stuff that's happening right now, without getting into too much detail. People are organizing as we speak and meeting, having informal meetings, having formal meetings, all of the things to reach their collective goals. So just wanted to.
I love this picture. I don't know where Leah found it, but it's like deuces.
I've confirmed that this is real as well. I feel like a few CGIMs ago, I took this picture out because I wasn't sure if it was real, but it's real. It's on the Atlantic's website, and there's a Snoops article about it. So this is a real photo, y'all.
Every time I see it, I was like, okay, forever, this must be the picture. Oh, love it.
All right, so now we're going to take part in some of these awesome organizing tools that we have that are free and are fun. So we're going to have a house meeting. So the question for tonight's conversation is, think of a time that you have felt powerless. This could relate to feeling powerless in your community or individually. And how did you feel and what did you do? So we've got 14 people.
Yeah, Princess needs to be co-host so she can split us up. Because you're the host.
All right, go ahead and made her a co-host.
Yeah, there we go.
All
So I'm gonna wait for her to put that in.
And it's 6:57 right now. How much time do you think?
So yeah, let's make it like 15 minutes so that we can have like 15 minutes to come back because we have to give some news, some, about the 3-day organizing workshop, and then we have a block party this weekend. So yeah, let's make it 15 minutes. So remember, okay, I'm going to my breakout room. All right. All right. So we're coming back. Leah, am I doing the debrief? You're doing the debrief. You're on mute.
Yeah, I'm gonna lead the debrief, but we can both kind of lead it together. So per usual, we're gonna debrief some of our conversations. Were there any conversations that stood out? And what are you gonna do to get involved? We usually adapt that question a little bit. I would say from the kind of tone of my conversation, what are you gonna do to move forward more so than get involved when you have those powerless feelings, right? And anyone who wants to start, you can raise your hand or just come off of mute.
Well, I'm just gonna, because, we're gonna, stretch your time. If it's okay, I'm just gonna, say what, lift up some things, and then if Ren and Susan and Danielle had to hop off, if they want to chime in, they can. So it's, with Ren, Ren was, talking about, wanting to make sure that her people, Black people, are getting involved, because there's so much going on. She has some, anxiety around, the fact that, young voters, she's wondering if they're gonna get out there and vote or know what's going on. And, there's some, apprehension around getting up and involved in that process and feeling powerless around that. And then Susan, it was a theme with Susan, and, this voting situation, what's gonna happen in November, feeling powerless right now, because, we just really don't know what's gonna happen with the voting process being such one where it makes it very difficult for people to figure out, especially down here. Ruth is probably shaking her head because she ain't having those problems, but we're we got Kemp up here. I'm afraid when I'm gonna go try to vote, if my name is gonna be kicked out. So
Unbelievable. I remember you guys waiting in line for hours and they didn't want to give you water. I mean, literally, we have early voting. I walked in, I was the only one there. I walked, did my voting, walked out. I mean, it's just unbelievable how
it's
easy it
really
is.
unbelievable. And it happens a lot, just cutting down the polling stations and all that stuff. And then with Danielle, it was pay equity, right? It really came down to pay equity, and, leadership, and the leadership setting the tone, whereas the women were being paid less, and, her having to be strategic, but feeling powerless because, she was, a mother who was just coming back to work, and, felt like she couldn't have a voice, even though she had a very important position. So hopefully did I get everything? Okay. Okay. Everything right. So that was ours, Leah.
Yeah, our group, we talked about a lot of it got deep because there's a lot of stuff going on in the world right now. And there's a lot of things that we can't control, and a lot of, specifically talking about what's going on in the Middle East. There's just so many feelings, and how do we address those feelings, and how do we move past this feeling of powerlessness? And also Denise, or not, was it Denise? I'm so sorry. Denise, yes. Denise brought up a really interesting scenario too, with where she feels powerless, and was talking about organizing and funding. And when that funding comes down and you've done all the steps of building capacity and organizing properly, but then you have all the funds, but nothing's being done, that feeling of powerlessness. And I really thought of us and organizing and being in, the nonprofit space. That happens a lot. And how do you move forward? So some of the things that we talked about, and I wrote it down, was Denise said in regards to that, pick something and stick with it.
That's right.
You need to stick with what you're focused on and what your passion is, and keep driving that forward. James really dropped some wisdom on us in there. He said, feeling gratitude because life is fragile. And when you feel powerless, have that trigger appreciation. But
Mm.
also, I think something I would like to add on to that is have it trigger appreciation and also have it trigger just local collective action and community action. And Drew, this is not going to surprise you, but he said, I start reading and learning, and having
Mm.
who helps him to get grounded and helps him figure out how can I basically Sankofa bird look
Mm.
back to move forward. What lessons can I take from previous leaders and their struggles, and use that to push me forward? Because I think me and Drew specifically being like Gen Z-ish,
Mhm.
it does really feel like we're kind of in the worst of times at
You're not.
it. But we're not gonna go there, but it feel like it's been back to back to back things where like it's different for every generation, but I think
Yeah.
Gen Z in this generation right now, it's like been back to back unprecedented things, and looking back and learning from those lessons, but also adding in our new perspective and our new voice. So I thought kind of taking those lessons out of that was really, really great. And I just want to again thank my group for being vulnerable and really utilizing the safe space to share their stories and also give some tips on how to not feel that way.
And I say that to say, not to say that you should not be feeling that way, because then I will be doing toxic positivity. The thing is, and I say that to be encouraging, because we're gonna have to, this stuff, like, I want us to be able to get through this. And we have to know that what we were talking about in there, and then I could just share a little bit, is that this fascism that we're playing with in this country right now is very dangerous.
Yes.
And the thing about it is that, and we are very vulnerable, okay, right now as a country. And we have to find ways that we're going to be working together. And I love what Denise stated, because, you know, these funders, they'll have you out here feeling some kind of way, like you're tap dancing for something. But you have to be able to have your own goals and things that you're going after, no matter what. If you don't get this, if this doesn't happen, if we don't get the person that we want in the White House, right? We have to have ways that we're moving forward. So not to discount or undermine what y'all are saying, because you're right. This is a horrible time right now. And there are things that are happening all the time, especially with the climate, with the politics, with the way that people are dying in other countries, and our hands and our part in it. It really is. So, but I think every generation experiences something, indeed. And I agree with you, James. And early 20s, that shapes the way you see the world. And this generation is dealing with a lot. That is so true. That is so true. But if we could leave with anything, because I do want to leave with, because this is what we started with, is building power and the need to grow. I like that.
Yeah, this was a documentary that I saw. It somehow appeared on my Instagram feed, but it was about going back to nature and respecting the soil. And the organization is grow.foodrevolution.org, and it's free for another, I think, 2 days. And then they want you to buy a bunch of stuff, which you don't want to have to buy if you don't want to, but and then I think it was $7 if you wanted to buy the movie. But it was really interesting because this man just really, you know, used the land. He was some sort of like biochemist or something or other, and, you know, created this house in Montana and just did all these things, generated energy, and it was really good. And it just shows that you have to buy local. You know, there's so many problems with the big corporations and the fertilizer and all the things that are making us unhealthy. So if anyone has a chance, if they Google it, they can probably.
I just
figure
wrote
it
it down. This might be something I could do.
Yeah.
So yeah, so with that being said, we are we got a couple more slides, but Leah, you know, maybe we could do this together, close this out together. It's really about capacity building. It's really about building power. If we want to make change, if we want to influence anything that is going on in this world right now, we have to be building this relational trust with each one of us. That one-on-one conversation is important. You know, we don't trust each other right now because of a lot of things that are going on. We are at each other more. We are antsy a little bit more. And sometimes we might just need to take a pause and stop, like I would do in campaigns, but we need to do it in our world and have those one-on-ones. So
I totally agree. And not to speak for everybody young, but I think also being children of technology also fosters a little bit of like this kind of cold and antisocial bit sometimes. I've seen it a lot with movements that are happening now. It's like people are organizing online and getting together and doing what we're talking about, having one-on-ones, having conversations, building relationship with one another. Once you get over that initial fear of like, oh, talking to someone in real life versus talking to someone on a screen. And I think that's a whole different conversation for another time, but definitely not being turtles with our heads in the sand. That was something that I've talked about it with you. That's something that I do. I think a lot of people my age do that. And these tools can help us build a path forward. So it was really, really awesome to have this conversation with you all. And once again, thank you guys.
Yeah,
you.
there are postcards for swing states that I ordered because I'm in a political group. So we're going to be sending those out. So we're kind of in the process of organizing. So people are trying to do what they can do, but it is very tough. I've been involved with I started with Obama, but I've been involved with the last few campaigns. So, but I hope your voting is easier than it was the last time. Oh my God.
It probably won't be, but
Unbelievable.
And guys, I think we might go like 5 minutes over, so totally understand if anyone has to hop off now. We're about at 7:30, but we've just got two more slides actually to get through, and then we'll be done for the night. And thank you guys for your participation.
Indeed. So we have a 3-day organizing workshop. So this 3-day organizing workshop is, we're going to go through the one-on-one conversation. We're going to go through the house meeting. We're going to go through building up leaders and building up their list and building up power. Okay. So we're going to go through all of that. And we're asking, it's going to be at Clark Atlanta University. It's going to be the 14th, the 15th, and the 16th. And it is the first of its kind environmental climate justice organizing workshop here in Atlanta, Georgia. And what we're looking for is, like, Susan, you're here, like, you could definitely come in. And what we're doing is like, thank you, Denise, the Sankofa bird, indeed. And Leah designed this. It's really dope. And so yeah, so we are asking people that if you want to be a part of the workshop, you know, just let us know. You know, we really are trying to get at least, because this is a pilot 3-day organizing workshop, this is something that we want to do each year. We're really going to start off small, and then we're going to make it something that we do constantly, hopefully throughout the state of Georgia and maybe throughout the Southeast. All right. Next slide. And Leah, I'll leave it to you.
Awesome. So thanks again, everybody, for coming to our May CGYM. As we kind of talked a little bit about our Juneteenth 3-day organizing workshop, that is taking up a lot of our people power on the team. So unfortunately, there's not going to be a June CGYM, but please watch our socials, watch our space. If you're feeling some withdrawals, you're missing the CGYM. We're going to be posting some trainings from our Juneteenth CGYM in lieu of the actual CGYM taking place. And you can look forward to our next CGYM, which is going to be in July, and we'll be covering the power of rural organizing. I can't talk too much about it because it's definitely still in the preliminary planning phase, but I do think that that one is going to be a really, really awesome CGYM. Honestly, all the CGYMs we've had so far this year, I've just been really happy, not only with the presentation, but with the engagement from you all. It's been really awesome. So you can scan that QR code or head to our social media, our link tree. That'll have the link to be able to register for July CGYM. We're also going to be hosting a Schools Out summer block party to kind of close out our Weatherize ATL campaign. It's sure to be fun if there's no rain this weekend at Adams. And it's going to be going from 12:30 to 4. There's going to be tie-dye, there's going to be a food truck, there's going to be drinks, there's going to be popsicles, face painter. It's going to be great. So I'm looking forward to that event. As always, if you guys ever need anything from us, we're on all the things, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out to us. And also, if you were interested in volunteering for our Juneteenth 3-day workshop, we have a volunteer form. And let me get that link for you guys. And you can just go in. It's a Google form, super easy. And you can just register through there. We'll be checking that form frequently to see if anyone's interested in volunteering with us. But thanks for staying on, y'all. I hope you guys have a great evening, and we'll see you in July.
Yay!
Have a great night, y'all.
Have a great night. Thank
Thank you.
you.
Good night, everybody.
Oh, thank you, Denise. Awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. All right, Ren.